Hi there, I'm Michelle the Painter from Berkshire Paint and Sip, and this is Paint and Sip at Home. Alright, so today I'm going to be painting kids on a beach and I'm sipping on some peach tea. And if you enjoy this process, I do hope that you like and subscribe to my channel and that you also check out my Patreon page where you're going to find additional painting perks. So let's get painting and let's get sipping. Alright, so for my materials today, I'm going to be using a stretched and primed 16 by 20 inch canvas. If you're painting along with me, you can certainly switch up the size, but that's what I'll be using. I'm going to be using acrylic paint today. My colors are titanium white, cobalt blue, phthalo green, fluorescent pink, deep yellow, burnt umber, which I like to call brown, and Mars black. And of course you can switch up those colors, but that's what I'll be using. For my tools today, I have a standard number 2 pencil that I'll be using for some drawing, and then I have 3 brushes. I have a 3/4 inch wide flat bristle brush, I have a number 5 round synthetic brush, and I have a number 2 round synthetic brush. And I will refer to these as small, medium, and large as we go through the painting process. And of course you could switch those up as well if you'd like. If you're painting along with me, you'll probably want to have a cup of water for washing your brushes as well as a paper towel for drying your brushes. And down below this video, in the video description, I will be providing you with a couple of additional resources that can help you throughout your painting process. One of them is a link where you can purchase the same exact paint kit that I'm using, from the same size and type of canvas to the same type of paints and brushes and all the good stuff in between. So that's there. There's also a link where you can download a free image of the final painting. So you can print that and use it as visual reference as you go through the painting process. And there's also written step-by-step instructions down there for you as well. And that's all we're going to need today. Alright, so what we're going to do for the first step is we're going to be painting the base coat for our water and our beach sand. I'm going to be using my large brush to paint, but I'm going to be using my medium brush to pre-mix a couple of colors. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to have my water nice and dark up at the top. It's going to fade into a lighter version kind of in the middle of the canvas, and then we'll get it to transition down into the beach sand. So the colors that I'm going to be using are blue, green, brown, yellow, and white. So I've pre-mixed my colors so you can see where I'm headed, and I'll show you how I got there. So my water, I'm going to be going for a nice dark, like aqua teal type of blue in through here. So it's a nice dark greenish blue color. So how I got to that was I used a little bit of my phthalo green, a good amount of my blue, and a teeny tiny touch of white paint, just an itty bitty bit on the tip of my brush, and I mixed them together. So yours could be more blue than mine, more green than mine, wherever your comfort zone is totally fine. You can even just use the cobalt blue if you wanted to, if you wanted it to look different than mine. The white in there will just make it the opacity a little bit better so it's not so see-through. So that's how I got to that color. The other color that I'm going to do, I'm going to wash and dry my brush so I can pre-mix my other color, which is my beach sand color. How I've gotten to this, it's a nice golden tan. What I did is I used about equal parts of my brown and yellow, and then I added just a little tiny bit of white into it. The white will turn it light really fast, so you don't need a lot of the white paint. It's easier to add more white into it than it is to take it away, so I recommend just adding a little bit at a time, and then once you've got it in the desired shade, you should be good. And that's looking pretty good to me. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to switch to my large brush. I'm going to pick up some of that bluish green color, and I'm going to start at the top of my canvas. I'm going to be using a left to right type of brush stroke. I'm going to have it wider on this left hand side, so my water is in essence going to come down at like an angle as it's coming down into the shoreline. And I'm just using a left to right brush stroke. You could certainly use any brush stroke that is comfortable to you. I just want this all to kind of look like it's blending in together. Now I'm picking up white on my dirty brush. So what'll happen is I'm in essence getting my water to go lighter and lighter as it's moving towards the, oops, I guess I had a little bit of yellow on there too. It'll make it look even more natural. So I'm getting it to go a little bit lighter and lighter as it comes down towards the middle of the canvas. So you can, in essence, get it to go as light as you want. We're going to start adding the beach sand into it. And if something like what just happened to me happens to you, where you accidentally add another color to it without expecting to add another color, that's okay. We're going to be doing another layer on top of this, which is going to add all of the movement into our water. So you'll have that opportunity to make any kind of little adjustments that you want. So now that I've done this, I've come down a little bit farther than halfway down my canvas. Now what I'm going to do without washing my brush is I'm going to start picking up my beach sand plus white on my brush, on my dirty brush. So I have beach sand plus white, and what this is going to do is it's going to start intermingling with the water. I'm overlapping those two sections in kind of a crisscross left to right type of brush stroke. So it's allowing for this water and beach sand to have a little bit of movement and kind of intermingle with one another, so they look like, you know, the water is overlapping the sand, and the sand is, you know, nestled underneath that water as it's coming into the shoreline. So right now I'm just picking up white with a tiny bit of my beach sand, and as I move towards the bottom, I'm just gonna I'll probably just pick up white and my beach sand this last time, and then as I move towards the bottom of my canvas, I will just be picking up the beach sand color. And you can see as I'm going through this that the blue from my water is releasing into this sand, and that's what's going to give it its real nice natural look. So even in here, if I wanted more, I could just kind of push my brush a little bit and release a little bit more of that ocean watercolor. And now that I'm moving down to the bottom of my sand, I'm going to just pick up my that custom tan color that we created, and I'm going to get my sand to go a little bit darker down at the bottom in through here. And then you can certainly do a second coat if you wanted to, but what I like to do is when I'm doing a step like this, I am going to, before it fully dries, I just picked up a little bit more white as it was transitioning in here. Before it fully dries, I'm going to kind of go back over without adding more paint to my brush. With a light touch, I can kind of go back over and do a little bit extra blending as it's drying. So this way, if there are some areas that I have a little bit thicker paint or it looks a little too stripy, this kind of step with just using a soft touch to it, this can really help that blending process through, you know, making it smoother looking and getting these colors to really blend in together as they're drying, just kind of continuing to manipulate them a little bit. It helps with eliminating brush strokes and all that good stuff. So once you've got this done, if you want to do a second coat, feel free to do so. We will be using the same brush for the next step, so you can just wash it and dry it and get ready. All right, so what we're going to do for the next step is we're going to finish our water and our sand. I'm going to be using my large bristle brush. I do recommend before you start the step that you make sure that your canvas is dry. So this is that time where you get to take an extra long break if you'd like to. Or you can find some kind of fun fanning method to get it dry, or you can do as I did and just whip out a blow dryer and get it dry that way. So what I'm really looking to do here is just put a little bit of movement into my water, so it looks like there's maybe some long, soft, rolling waves coming into the beach, and then put maybe a little bit of kind of the essence of maybe a little bit of foamy stuff on my beach sand. I really want my beach sand to kind of look a little wet, so that way when I put my figures on the sand, I can have a reflection of them in the sand, so that way it looks like they're just really walking on the water's edge, and that sand might still be a little bit wet from the ocean kind of receding. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to plan out where I want my, we'll call them waves, to go, and then we'll we'll work them into the water as well as the beach sand. I'm really just going to have two kind of diagonal type of soft waves coming in, you can utilize light spots on that you've already got on your canvas. So when I'm doing stuff like this where I want to add movement to water and things of that nature, I can look for, and I did this kind of gradient of background, I can look for light spots and dark spots and use them to my advantage. So if I want, I can see that I've got this real dark area in through here, so I can have my light edge to my wave kind of right below that, and that will help me to kind of transition it back into that darkness. And then I have another kind of light spot in through here, so I can utilize this as like another wave. So I'm going to put a tiny bit of white paint on my brush. I'm using a bristle brush so I can almost kind of scrub or blend that paint out as it's drying. So a bristle brush is nice and firm, so it can help you to kind of scrub that paint into a nice soft blend. So I'm going to tackle this one first, this bottom one in through here. So I'm coming down, if this is about halfway down my canvas, I'm a couple inches above that. So this is maybe about a third of the way down my canvas. And I don't need this to be anything perfect. I just really kind of want to have some good, maybe a little bit of an angle to it. And then what I'm doing is I'm rubbing it up into the water behind it. So this just kind of gives me that soft edge of the water rolling into it, and I don't need it to be perfect. That's Mother Nature never makes things perfectly straight, so I like to kind of give myself a little bit of organic look to it. I'm picking up a little bit more white paint so I can do the one up top. So again, I'm going to kind of have it up in this direction. I probably won't be able to get all the way across this one because I feel like I don't have enough paint on my brush. Less is more, I always tell myself, but sometimes I run out of paint along the way. So I just had to add a little bit more paint, and I'm going to just rub it up into the area above it, and then maybe just give myself a little bit of a light wave in through here, and again, just kind of rubbing it up into that darkness. Throughout this process, you can utilize your previous colors. Like I feel that this is gonna need a second coat. So throughout this process of finishing my water and my beach sand, I will be going back also, and if I have an area that needs a little bit more refinement, I will touch that as well. But right now, again, just kind of placing my waves where I want them. I'm going to put a little bit more white paint on my brush because I know that I'm going to want some little ripples coming into my sand. So again, just a little bit of white paint on my brush. I'm just really kind of going back and forth right now and giving myself almost like these diagonal type of light spots. They don't all have to be perfectly aligned with one another, but just giving yourself these little bits of light, almost like, I don't want to call them veins, but they kind of resemble little veiny type of marks to me. And again, I'm not using a lot of paint on my brush, so this is allowing me to add just kind of subtle type of marks to it, just a little tiny bit on my brush, and I continue to look for some light spots and kind of enhance those with these little bits of white on my brush. So now that I've got kind of a little bit of a roadmap as to where I just want those bits of ripples and stuff to go, now I'm going to start enhancing them. So I know that typically, like if a wave is coming over, you might see some of the underside of it, and then it might kind of get a little bit darker underneath it. And of course, all waves are different depending on how big or, how tall or shallow they are. But I'm going to put a tiny bit of green and yellow on my brush at the same time. So I have a little bit of green and yellow, and I'm going to kind of pick where I want some of these undersides of the waves to go. So it'll kind of look like it's coming up out of the water and maybe cresting a little bit with this greenish type of look to it. I'm not going far. I'm not doing a lot. I'm going to do a little bit in through here. I want to have kind of a good one kind of in through here. So just a little bit of that green and yellow on my brush. And just so it'll look like it's kind of cresting over in this direction. We'll have a little bit of a kind of a good cap of a wave in through there. I'm going to pick up a little bit of my custom blue now. So the blue that we originally created, I didn't wash my brush. I'm going to get this to all intermingle with it. I'm going to just kind of put another little layer up here while I have that color on my brush. Make sure everything looks like it's got a nice second coat to it and that it's fully rendered, making sure it kind of blends in with that light area that we just created. So just a little bit of my original blue-green on my brush in through here, just giving it a light kind of wisping type of appearance. And again, right now I'm just kind of making sure that the dark areas, like this greenish area that we just created, are blended in well with the surrounding water. I think this one over here, I might put a little bit more darkness in the water here. I'm going to have this kind of a good wave in through here. So I just added a little bit more of my bluish green onto my brush to make this look like it's kind of got a lot of movement or deepness as it's coming into this wave that I'm gonna put in. A little bit more maybe underneath here. So right now just kind of adding where I want these dark spots to go. Maybe this water is a little bit more dark as it's coming into the sand. That's looking pretty good. So now I'm going to start adding my we'll call them white caps to my water, and maybe a little bit more blue right underneath here. It's going to be my little wave, my biggest wave that I'm going for, so something like that. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to add some kind of white caps to my water. So if you have a ton of paint on your brush, you could certainly wash it and dry it, but I want to have a little bit of my dirtiness on my brush, so I wiped mine off on my paper towel, and I'm picking up some white paint. And I'm going to give myself some kind of little white caps, maybe a little ripple to the a wave coming in this direction, and I'm utilizing my brush in the direction that I feel that the water is moving. So I've got it maybe all foamy in through here, and then over here maybe it kind of pulls over like it's going over this little wave in through here. Maybe I put a little bit more transition in through here. I think I'm going to put a little bit more on top of here too, as if it's maybe cresting over a little bit in through there. This can be a little bit smoother, and you don't have to do yours exactly as mine. I'm just going with what I feel this would all kind of, go in my head. I just want these nice gentle waves. I don't think I want this one to kind of look like it's really cresting, so to speak, but maybe just a little bit of lightness coming in through here. Maybe this one has a little bit of extra on top, but not much. That looks good. I'm going to put a little bit of a shadow underneath here. So I'm going to pick up a tiny bit of brown on my dirty brush. A little bit of brown is going to go right underneath these little pieces in through here, just to give it a little bit more dimension to those splashes. So making sure that the water is not just white when it's splashing. That's going to give you a lot of natural look to it as well. And maybe it's kind of churning up some of the sand that's on the beach in through here, so that will help as well. So that was just a little bit of brown. And then as I come down into my sand area in through here, I just want to make down at the bottom a little bit darker, so it gives me some good depth perception. So I've got a little bit more brown on my brush here, and I'm going to be using this same kind of wiggling left to right brush stroke, even with the brown. And I didn't wash my brush because I love when my colors just kind of all blend into one another. So I had the remnants of whatever watercolor I was doing. Now I'm adding a little bit of brown into here. So I'm looking for some dark spots. So this will enhance whatever little, if I do have little waves or little ripples, those brown spots will enhance that. I'm going to bring a little bit more darkness down over and through here. And I don't want it to go too dark, but I would like to make sure that it looks like I have a full coat on it. So that's really what I'm looking for right now, just to make sure that I don't have any too much brush marks that look like unfinished. I'll just kind of keep going back with these various colors. Actually, this is looking pretty good to me. I'm looking around like, what else do I want to do? But it's looking pretty good to me. So I might step back from it, see it from a distance, and if there's any additional stuff that I want to do. I just picked up a little bit more white. As I'm looking at this one over here, I feel like I might want a little bit more white to kind of represent the brightness of this little kind of wave that I've created over here, this little foamy action. But you could certainly let yours dry. If you feel like you want to add anything more to it, feel free to do so. Get it to be soft, get it to have tons of movement. It's going to be totally up to you. And then we're going to be using our pencil for the next step. So once you've got this done, you can put this large brush away, take out your pencil, and get ready for the next step. All right, so what we're going to do for the next step is we're going to be drawing a basic outline for our kids. I'm going to be using my pencil. I'm going to be guiding you through a series of markers. We'll connect the markers. We're going to make some basic shapes. We're not going for anything too detail oriented. We'll be doing that during the painting process, but we do need to get some basic shapes in here so we can start our coloring in process for painting. So I'm going to start us off with two vertical lines that are going to be the height of both of the children from top to bottom. I'm going to be having my boy is going to be a little bit further in front of my girl, so I'm going to position them with my boy a little bit higher on my canvas than the girl. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to find myself the center of my canvas, left to right, top to bottom. So my center is right about here. What I'm going to do is I'm going to go up from that about 2.5 to 3 inches and over to the left about 1 inch. This is where I'm going to have the top of my boy's head, somewhere in through here. Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to come directly down from that until I'm about, I would say about 3 inches away from the bottom of my canvas. That's my second marker. I'm just going to connect these two dots right now with a vertical line. This does not have to be a perfectly straight line. This is just really giving us a place to start for drawing the body of this little person. So I'm going to do the same thing for my girl, only I'm going to be about maybe 1 inch or 1/2 inch to 1 inch lower than this one, maybe even, yeah, like 1/2 inch, and over to the left about 3.5 inches. So this is where the top of her head is going to go. And then I'll bring it straight down. I'm a little bit lower than this one, and this is the bottom of where the bottom of her is going to go. And I'm going to connect these two dots with my vertical line. So this really just gives us a starting point to build from. Now what I'm going to do is kind of mark where I want my waist to go, the waist height. So that's going to be a little bit above my halfway point. So if this is about halfway, up or down, up, down this line, I'm going to go maybe about 1/4 to 1/2 inch above that. That's going to just represent where I do my waist, or where the waist is located. So same thing with here. If this is about halfway up this line, I'm about 1/4 to 1/2 inch above that. Again, just a marker to tell us where that waist is. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to build these two children off of that. So I'll start with my boy first. So I'm going to go about halfway between my waist and the top of my head. This is going to be the top of his back or the shoulder area. I'm going to give myself a little soft horizontal line that's about 1.5 inches wide. I'm going to give myself a tiny little neck in through here, a little bit off to the right from my center line, and now I'm going to just put a cute little hat on. So your hat can really be anything that you want. I'm just going to kind of give mine almost like a little like fisherman kind of hat, but you could certainly give yours anything you want. So that's going to be my hat for him. My shirt is what I'm going to put on next. I'm going to have my shirt come about, I would say maybe halfway down his rear end. So I'm going to come down from here almost, I would say about 1 inch. That's where the bottom of the shirt is going to go. I'm going to pull it out from left to right, maybe a little bit farther on the right hand side than the left hand side. And this is going to be the bottom corners of my shirt. My shoulders, I'm going to pull these out just a little bit in through here, a little bit past the rim of that hat, come down, give myself a little bit of the edge of a sleeve, do the same thing over here. And these don't have to be exactly the same. The arms are going to be positioned different. This arm is kind of coming back to hold his the little girl's hand, and this one's kind of out to hold the bucket, the bucket that they're going to be using to make some sandcastles. So they don't have to be exactly at the same angle. And then I'm just going to connect this to the edge of to the bottom corner of my shirt. Again, I'm not doing a straight line. I want it to look like it has a little bit of movement to it. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to put on a pair of shorts. So I'm going to come a little bit in from the corner of my sleeve or of my shirt, a little bit in from the corner of my shirt. I'm going to have the center of his legs right where my line is. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring this one in just kind of straight across, and then this one I'm going to bring up in a curved line. This is going to make this back leg look like it is kind of walking backwards, and we're going to see the contour to his leg. So something like that. I'm going to build my legs now. So the left leg is going to be in from here just a little bit. I'm going to bring it down in just a little bit of a slightly curved line coming towards that center line. He's got a little ankle in through here, and then just a little foot like that. On the right hand side, this leg we're going to be seeing more of. It's going to look a little bit wider because it's towards the viewer more, because he's in a walking position. So a little bit in from my pant leg. I'm going to bring this in like this. This is going to be like his calf. His ankle is going to be right in through here, and then his foot is going to come down at an angle. We're going to have just a little bottom to the foot, and we'll be creating much more detail to this as we go through the painting process, but that'll get us started. I'm going to put an arm on over here. So my elbow would be at about the same height as my waist. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to come out from here about 1/4 to 1/2 of an inch, kind of give myself the information that that's the elbow. I'm going to bring this up here. The crook of the elbow is going to be up kind of diagonal from that, so that will be here. And then I'm going to give myself a little child forearm, something like that. He's got a little bit more softness to his skin in through here. This is going to be his wrist, and then his little hand's going to be holding the bucket in kind of like a little sideways way. So something like this, just a couple little round edges in through there. And again, doesn't look like much now, but it'll look much better when we're done. I'm going to put him holding a little bucket, so I'm just going to do a couple of curved lines in through here. My bucket is at an angle, something like this. And of course, you can have your bucket. Maybe yours isn't holding a bucket. Maybe he's holding a beach ball, or maybe he's holding, I don't know, an umbrella or something, a fishing rod maybe, with his cute little fishing hat. And the other arm, again, I'm going to kind of mark where I want my elbow to go, just to give me a little point of reference. That's going to come out like this, and the elbow would be kind of sticking out towards the viewer a little bit. It's going to be his forearm in through here, and then we're just going to see a little piece of his hand where he's going to be holding on to the little girl. So I'm just going to kind of stop that right in through there, which is just past where my shirt is. That's all I'm going to do for him. I'm going to move to my girl now. So I'm going to come almost halfway between the top and the bottom, maybe a little bit higher than the halfway point. Again, this is where the top of her shoulders are. I'm going to pull this out to the left a little bit, and then a little bit to the right, maybe a little bit more to the left than the right, because she's at a little bit of an angle here. I'm going to put a little bit of a neck in through here and here, and now she gets a cute hat too. Hers is going to be a little bit more kind of beachy, floppy than his is. Hers has a little bit more feminine flair to it, so maybe something like this, and then just giving the little curved area for the top of it. I'm going to do her shirt now. So again, I'm going to come down from her waist, so her shirt covers part of her rear end. I'm going to come maybe down about an inch or so, somewhere in through here. I'm going to bring it out to the left, out to the right a little bit. I'm a little bit far, just for point of reference, a little bit farther than the line I did up here. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to give myself the sleeves, so kind of curving this, bringing it down just a little bit, curving it here, bringing it down just a little bit. Going to give her the edge of her sleeve like that. And then same thing over on this side. And I'm curving the edges of her sleeve so it looks like it going around her arm. You don't necessarily have to do that, but she's got her arms, I think, in a little bit more of a backwards position than he did, or, you know, out a little bit more. So now I'm going to close off the inside of here with the edge of her shirt. Close this off with the edge of her shirt. I'm going to give her a little bit of a skirt. So I'm going to come in again from the edge of her shirt in a little bit, and then I'm just going to kick it out like it's a little kind of short beach skirt, something like this. And then I'm just going to kind of ripple the edges of this, something like that, because her legs are more in a forward. One of her legs is straight down and one is a forward position, so I didn't need to do something like that. I'm going to do her legs now. So one of her legs is going to be, her left leg I've got kind of going forward, and her knee is going forward. So this leg is kind of straight down. So we're going to see this leg is going to be a little bit wider than the left leg. So I'm going to go a little bit to the left of my center line, right about here. And then I'm going to go about halfway between my center line and the corner of my skirt. That's going to be the exterior thigh part. I'm going to say that her knee is probably right about here. So I'm going to bring this in a little bit like that. And then I'll just bump it out a little bit more for her calf area. And then this is going to kick out for her foot. It's something like that. This edge is about the heel of her foot. Maybe she's got a little bit of a shin bone in through there. And then I'm just going to kind of ride this up close to that center line and then maybe just bump it out a little bit going up to that thigh. The other leg, I'm going to come about halfway between here and the edge of my skirt, so somewhere about here is going to be the exterior part, and then right about where I indicated the knee might be, that's where I'm going to start kicking, seeing it come out from here. So this is going to come down in through here. This foot, this back foot is going to be up, so we're going to see kind of the bottom side of this foot in through here, and so this is going to come down like this. We've got her knee, the back of her knee. This is going to be her calf muscle. And then this is going to be like the side or the bottom side of her foot, something like that. So then I'm going to put her arms on. I've got one arm that's going to be connected to this one here. So again, following her waist over here, her elbow would be about here. So that's going to give me my diagonal line there and a diagonal line here. And then I can kind of bring this in a little bit of a arc or whatever it's going to take to get to the wrist area is in through here, and then I just have her little hand is going to be kind of clasping the other one, so just going to give it a little bit of a curve in through there, and then this arm in through here, again kind of following it out to here. I've got this arm kind of swung out a little bit, so I would need to know kind of where that waist height is, and then swing it like this in order to tell me where that elbow is, so somewhere about there. I'm going to give myself the forearm, the bicep area right here, and then the rest of the arm is going to come down in through here. This is going to, she's holding on to a little shovel, so I'm just going to give her a little bit of a thumb in through here. It's going to wrap around my little shovel handle, so something like this is where the shovel's going to go. And of course she could be holding anything that you'd like her to be holding. And then you'll just do any little fine-tune adjustments that you feel are necessary. We're going to use our medium brush for the next step. So once you've got this done, you can put your pencil away, make any adjustments you need to, take out your medium brush, and get ready for the next step. All right, so what we're going to do for the next step is we're going to paint the base coat on our kids. I'm going to be using my medium brush. The colors I'm using are pink, yellow, white, brown, and blue. I think that's it. If I use any others, I'll let you know. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to first make myself a skin tone, which I'm going to make a very kind of sunshiny tan, like they've been out in the sun for a while. So this is the color that I've made. I'll show you how I got there. You can certainly do any skin tone that you want, but I'm making mine kind of on the darker side, so when I go to add the highlights, it's going to have a nice high contrast to it. So that's why I'm kind of going with a real nice tan color here. So how I got to this was I used brown yellow, and pink, and just a touch of white. So not a lot of white, and I will add my white slowly because the white will be very powerful, and I don't, again, want it to go too light. So I spin those colors together, and if I need to do any adjusting, I will. So I feel like I might want to put a little bit more yellow and brown into this, and then I just keep adjusting it until I've got the color that is a desired shade that I would like. So this is looking pretty good. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to utilize this color to paint in all of my skin areas. So this is going to account for the necks. And again, this is just the base coat. So we're going to be doing a lot of detail work on top of this later. So we'll be doing highlights and shadows and all kinds of other informative steps that will give this more body and shape. So all we're looking to do right now is just color it in. So if it tends to be, or if you notice some streakiness or some see-throughness, or you can see your pencil marks, that's okay. That will all be taken care of as we progress through the painting process. Or if you get done doing this and you're like, ooh, that's too brown or too orange or too pink, it's all right, because you'll be able to modify that tone when we go to do the second layer on it. So again, I'm just kind of painting in all of my skin areas, bringing it right to my pencil. If there's an area that I feel that maybe the pencil mark is out too far, then I just leave it there and I can erase it later. So that's always a possibility. When you get to the leg areas that are touching one another, you'll be able to see through your paint, or most likely you'll be able to see through your paint. So you can paint right over that center line. It will still, or the separation line for the two legs, but if your paint is not transparent like mine is, you might want to leave yourself a little bit of a space where the legs touch so you don't lose your reference line through the painting process. So that'll be up to you depending on what kind of paint you're using, or if you feel it's necessary to see that line through there. So I'm just kind of coming right down in through here. And if you go outside your lines, that's okay. You can always either quickly correct it with a little bit of water on your brush to erase it, or just let it dry and then you can paint over it with your background colors after it dries. That'll be a fine way to correct it. Or if if your child's legs grow, that's okay too, Maybe your hat turns out a little bit bigger than you had anticipated. All that kind of stuff works out. The only thing I caution you is you don't want to throw them too far out of proportion. If one leg goes a little bit larger accidentally, then you might want to make the other leg larger accidentally or on purpose, and that way they'll stay in proportion with one another. So that's just, one of those things as we're painting this. Even if we do an outline to it, it can easily get skewed out of proportion during the painting process, just because we color outside of our lines, or we decide that we want something a little bit bigger or smaller. So just keeping your eye on that will help to make the painting more believable by the end, and to keep the proportions as you had intended them to be. So just getting this in through here. And then for the hats and the clothing, you could really paint yours in whatever color scheme you want. Perhaps perhaps you're trying to depict a specific child that and they have a favorite bathing suit or a favorite hat or a favorite shirt that they like to wear to the beach. So you could certainly utilize any colors that you want. I'm just going to go for a pink for her and a blue for him. So for me, I'm going to use, I just washed and dried my brush. I'm going to add a little bit of white to some of my pink. So the base coat of her clothing is just going to be a nice light pink, and then we'll add some highlights and shadows on top of it later. I'm going to paint all of her clothing, including her hat, with this color, so she is nice and color coordinated. But again, if you want her to have a yellow polka dotted hat or purple skirt, this is just really a process that would be personal to you, whatever colors that you want. I just thought that these would be, you know, they're just ones that I liked. So you can make them into whatever you'd like. And then of course I'm going to do my shirt. And again, I know that my paint is a bit transparent, but I am using a lot of white in this pink, so it might not be as transparent as the skin color that I used. So when I get to the area where the shirt meets the skirt, I may opt to leave a little visual kind of reference for myself between those two areas, so I don't lose the information where I wanted these two areas. So I can test it. If I can still see my line under there, that's great. But if for some reason I couldn't see my line, I would have just left a little tiny space between my shirt and my skirt. So that would be a tip for you. If you can't see through your paint, you can certainly just leave yourself a little gap between those two pieces of clothing, and that will provide you the visual reference that you need for the paint for when we go to do the details. And then again, just bringing this down to her, to the pencil mark, and I'm rippling it a little bit at the edge so it'll give it a nice kind of movement to the skirt. Just bringing it kind of straight down on the edges. And then for my boy, I'm just going to use my cobalt blue as my base coat. I'll be adding highlights and shadows and stuff later, but right now I'm just going to use my cobalt blue so I washed and dried my brush, and I put some of the cobalt blue on. Again, I know that this blue is really see-through, and I will be able to detect a lot of stuff underneath it. It's going to look pretty streaky on this first go around, but that's just the nature of this, and that's why building layers makes for an easier painting process. So you're not fighting with the transparency of certain colors. You're just kind of using them in a layering process, getting it on here. The more layers, the better. The more layers you put on there, the more it's gonna you're going to have control over the solid aspect of it if you wanted it to be a nice solid color. But right now, just going to give it this nice base coat. I'm going to wrap it around the arms just a little bit. I don't know if I said I didn't execute that fully on the girl, but when I go to do the details, I will make sure that the sleeves wrap around the arms to give it a little bit of a more realistic look. And again, just bringing it down to the shirt. I know it's going to be see-through for me, so I can just go right over the edge of that shirt where it meets the shorts. And I just keep picking up my cobalt blue to finish out his clothing. For the bucket and the shovel, I'm going to create a little bit of an orange kind of color. Again, you could use any color that you want. Maybe you want them to color coordinate with the clothing that you're or however many kids you are putting in here. Maybe you're putting adults, and maybe you're putting adults who are going to go build a sandcastle. But anyways, point being is you can make your bucket and your shovel whatever colors that you'd like. So I'm going to just make mine an orange color, and how I'm going to get to that, because I don't have orange on my tray, on my palette, is I'm going to use pink and yellow and a tiny bit of white. So pink and yellow is going to make this really vibrant, peachy, orangey tone. If you want it more peachy, use more pink. If you want it more orangey, use more yellow. So that'll be your choice, and the white helps with the opacity of it. So just a teeny tiny bit of white paint in there. So that's going to be my orange color for these guys. And then again, just kind of doing one layer on them. It will most likely be super see-through. But again, I'm not concerned about that at this moment. I'm just concerned about getting a nice base coat on here. And then we're going to be using our small brush for the next step. So once you've got this done and you've got all of your elements with a nice base coat, again, don't be concerned if it's not a solid coat, but once you've got this on, you can put this medium brush away, take out your small brush, and get ready for the next step. All right, so what we're going to do for the next step is we're going to finish the skin. I'm going to be using my small brush. The colors that I'm going to use are black, brown, white, and my skin tone. And if you feel you need to tweak it and use a little bit more yellow or pink to adjust it as we're going toward it being lighter, feel free to do so. I might too, but in my head right now I'm thinking I don't need to, but in case I do, I'll let you know. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to add some shadows, which will be shadows underneath my hats. I'll have some underneath all of my clothing edges, and then for me, I'm picturing my sun to be up in the upper left side of the atmosphere. So I'm going to have shadows kind of down on the right side of my pieces of my body. So I'll have shadows on the right side, and then we'll come in and do some highlights. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to first start with a bit of black. I don't know if I think I told you the colors. Yeah, black, brown, skin color, white. So I have a tiny bit of black and brown on my brush right now. I'm going to put a little bit of a shadow underneath these hats. I'm really thinking that there'll be a strong shadow underneath them. So I'm going to do the same thing on both sides. So just a little tiny bit of black and brown. And if it didn't blend in well enough for you to the skin color, you can wipe your brush off, pick up a little bit of skin color, and just blend that in from the left-hand side towards that shadow on the right-hand side. And then I'm going to repeat that exercise underneath all of my edges of my clothing. So I have a little edge to my clothing here. I'm going to put a tiny bit of black and brown in through here. I can also pull this down the bottom side in through here just to make sure that it kind of translates as the underside of that shirt. You can also put a tiny bit of water on your brush too to get the fluidity of the paint. So a little bit of black and brown. I'm picking up a tiny bit more black right now just so I can get that underside of her shirt. And these shadows are what's going to really sell the story of the sunshine being really nice and bright. So I'm going to do the same thing on him. And again, just a little bit of black, brown, and maybe a touch of water on the brush. And I'm just using the tip of my brush. You don't need a lot of paint. Just a little bit on there is going to really get that shadow in there. And then maybe just pull it down a little bit on the right side of that arm, whatever that would be. If it's on the outside of the arm or the inside of the arm. So that's looking good. I'm going to go down to the bottom part of the clothing. Do the same thing. So I've got black and brown. I'm going to put this shadow on her leg in through here. I'm going to put it underneath here. So just kind of scooting that little shadow underneath that skirt. And then I'm going to rub it out just a little bit so you can, if you need to, you can pick up a little bit of water or a little bit more brown or whatever's going to work for you to just kind of get that shadow to blend in a little bit with that leg in through there. So that's working out good. I'm going to put a little bit more brown on my brush here so I can get this to blend down into here. I probably have a little bit of extra maybe shadow on the back side of this leg, so I'm just going to make sure that I've got that a little bit darker coming down in through here just to give that illusion. This one might actually have a highlight as it's going out towards the viewer, so I might have to put a little bit of a highlight on that in a minute. So this is looking pretty good. Now I'm going to continue my shadows for the rest of the skin. So I'm going to be using more brown than black on the rest of, I needed shadows underneath his pants. Hold on. Adding that black and brown mixture on my brush. Give myself just a little tiny shadow underneath here. Little tiny. This leg is going to be kind of out towards the viewer. I want it to look closer to us, so I'm not going to put, and closer to the sun, so I'm not going to put a ton of shadow on this one. Maybe just a little bit down this right hand side of the leg, and then maybe a little bit down in here, just a little bit. So something like that. That works out pretty well for me. So now I'm going to pick up more brown. I'm not going to wash my brush, but I'm picking up more brown on my brush. I'm going to put the shadows on her skin, or on their skin, on the rest of it. So I would picture maybe a little bit of shadow on the bottom side of the arms. If the sun is over here, it's going to be on the right side or the bottom side. So maybe something in through here is going to be it. Also, if you have little dips in the elbows, because it's a young person, there might be a little like dimple in the elbow. So you could put little dot in through there. If this is my elbow in through here, I could put couple little dimples in that in the elbow area. Maybe there's a little bit of shadow on this right side of her arm, on her wrist. They got little, good amount of skin on the wrist, so that'll help to give that delineation. Maybe a little bit on this bottom side because it is kind of curled under a little bit. A little bit maybe in her fingers. So just more brown on my brush is how I'm doing these kind of shadows on the skin. I'm going to go up his arm here with a little maybe dimple in his elbow, little bit of a shadow down this right side in through here. And I'm not doing a whole heck of a lot, but I really just want to make sure that there's a pretty dark shadow. His wrist, I'm going to put a little shadow in through there. Also maybe on the inside of his hand because he's holding her hand. So a little bit of a shadow in through there. And this is a good time to start to get rid of your pencil marks too. So that's good there. On this arm over here, maybe we've got a couple little dimples on his elbows. And then of course he's going to have a little shadow on this bottom side, I'm thinking, because that's holding, it might be like crooked because it's holding the bucket, something like that. And then maybe some little shadows at the bottoms of his fingers. But again, I'm not doing a whole heck of a lot, just adding that darkness. Picking up a little bit more brown paint so I can travel down her legs. So I'm going to put some shadow on this left hand side. This is going to be where her calf is meeting her knee, so on the back side. So I'm just going to kind of give a little sideways shadow like that. I'm going to put some down on this front side of her calf like this, and then maybe something in her ankle area to just kind of give the story of her ankle, maybe on this side of her foot in through here. This is going to be like where her heel is, and I'm going to put a little bit at the bottom of her foot in through here. So all these little strategic shadows are right now giving form and shape to her legs. If this is the back of her knee in through here, I can add a little bit of shadow over here. I'm going to add, maybe just bring this down a little bit further so we can tell that that's maybe where her back of her knee is. Bring a little bit down this right hand side, and I'm going to be adding the highlights in a second too, which are going to give this a lot more information. Maybe a little bit on her shin bone in through here, maybe a little bit over in through here, and then maybe a touch, I don't know, underneath her foot. This foot's going to be in the sand, whereas this one's kind of lifted off a little bit. I'm going to go to him now with a little bit of brown paint on my brush. We've got his arms taken care of, his legs. I think I'd have some shadow. I'm going to call this like the back of his knee in through here, so I'll put a little shadow there. This is kind of the back of the knee in through here, so maybe a little bit in through there. And then I'm going to have a lot of shadow down this right side of his leg. So again, I just am using brown on my brush right now. I might have a little bit of remnants of the black, but nothing major, more just brown to kind of deepen the tone of the skin. Something in through here too. This is gonna give me the shape of this right leg in through here. So something like that, and then just kind of blend it out into this left leg. And then we've got maybe around the feet, a little bit of a shadow underneath here. He's got his ankle, maybe just a little bit in through there. This is the bottom of his foot, so I'm going to put a shadow at the bottom of his foot in through here. And then his heel is right here, so maybe a little bit of shadow over in through here. That's looking pretty good. So now I'm going to add little bits of highlights. So I'm going to wash and dry my brush, and I'm going to be using my skin color plus white. So skin color plus white on my brush. I definitely want some pretty severe highlights, so I'm going to be putting a good one over in through here, maybe one on this back side of her arm. When I do my highlights, I'm going to be blending them a little bit more than I did my shadows, and I definitely want them to be more on this left side than the right side of the body. So I'm going to do it pretty severe there. Now I just wiped my brush off on my paper towel and picked up my skin tone to get this to blend in. So I like to put that highlight on there and then just get it to blend out into the rest of the skin, so that way I can see if I need to elevate it at all. If I want a little extra pop of brightness, I can just pick up a touch more white and just get it to blend in right then and there, and then I can just move on. So that looks pretty good to me. So I'll go down to this left leg. So again, just my skin color plus a little bit of white, and this is definitely a less is more kind of step. You don't need a lot of paint on your brush in order to get a good kind of effect. So that was the back of her calf, the little her little shin or heel in through here. This is the side of her foot, and now I'm going to pick up some of my skin tone to get it to blend in. That was a little pink. There must have been something else in there. So a little bit of skin tone to blend it in, and then if I need to add a little bit more white, and I just kind of keep elevating it until it is what I want it to be. So if I go too much or too little and it's just not working out, I'll let it sit for a minute and then come back and make any adjustments that I need to, especially with that original skin tone. That's going to help me to blend areas out. It'll help me to make them lighter or darker. So again, white plus a little bit of my skin tone. This one I'm going to put a little bit more on this left-hand side of this leg. So something like that, and then just kind of pull it down. I'm going to have a little bit on her heel in through here, so her foot is laying down flat, whereas the other one wasn't. Maybe a little bit on this back shin bone, and I'm just looking for areas that I feel would be popping out the most to the viewer. I think I want a little bit more on there too. Would be popping out the most to the viewer and closest to the sun. So if she's got a calf muscle back here and it's, you know, closer to the sun, so the left one to me would be a little bit brighter. I just added a bit more brightness to that, and I just blend it out. And then I'm going to do the same thing on my boy. Oh, I need her right arm. So the right arm I don't need as light as this, but I do need to make sure my skin tone is finished. So I just picked up some of my skin tone, just making sure I've got nice good coverage, and if I needed to reshape it at all, I certainly could. I'm going to add a tiny bit of white plus my skin tone on her hand, because I feel that this would kind of pop out a little bit. So a little bit of brightness on there, maybe a couple on her knuckles. That'll make that look like it's kind of popped out to the viewer a little bit. And if you felt you needed it any lighter, feel free to do so. For him, I'll put it up on his upper arm in through here and on this left side. So again, I have the white plus my skin tone on my brush right now to give me this highlight, and then I get it to blend out into the skin tone itself. His hand, maybe just make sure that I've got it fully covered. And again, to blend it, I just pick up the skin tone. So I just picked up my skin tone just to get these to blend. I left my elbow a little bit darker, so it looked like it had that little kind of dimple in it. And then on the right side, I don't need to do a whole heck of a lot because, again, this right side is not as close to the sun as the left side. But I do feel that this back part of his arm might be popping out a little, so I just added a bit of a highlight in through here to just get the back side of his arm to pop out just a little bit more, which will show that it's back a little bit. So something like that. And then just make sure that I've got a full coverage with that skin tone on his hand. And if I wanted any little highlights, maybe just a touch on the forearm just to give it a little bit more shape. Just kind of fiddle with it like that. And then I'll do the same thing for his legs. This left side's going to be pretty light, so white plus a little bit of my skin tone. And again, I'm not using a whole heck of a lot. This is going right on his bottom portion of his leg. That line is where I indicated the knee. I was going to place the crook of the knee, so I just putting that highlight on in through there, making sure that it blends out. I'm going to start this highlight on this leg as well. This one's the one that's going to be kind of kicking out closest to us, so I'm going to put probably the most lightness of everywhere right here to make sure that this leg looks like it's coming back towards us, and that'll explain that. That'll translate as that to the viewer. He's got his heel in through here. So that's going to be out to the viewer a lot. His little calf muscle, maybe this is the side of his foot. So again, just putting those highlights where I feel it would be closest to the viewer. I just added my skin tone to get them to blend in a little bit more, something like that. Make sure that I've got this blended out or blended with the neighboring colors. This is looking pretty good. We got this going on in through here, making sure this blends in up in through here. And then again, I would let it dry. Of course, I need to step back because I'm sitting this close to it. So if I need to do any little fiddling and adjusting, I certainly will. But this is pretty much what I'm going to be doing for them. And if you have any little tweaks and adjustments, feel free to do so. Make sure that your pencil is covered or taken care of by the end of this step. And then we're going to be using this same small brush for the next step. So once you've got this done, you can wash and dry this small brush and get ready for the next step. All right, so what we're going to do for the next step is we're going to finish our girls' clothing. I'm going to use my small brush. The colors I'm using are light pink, fluorescent pink, brown, and white. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to add highlights and shadows in order to create form and dimension on her clothing. So I'm going to first start with my shadows. I'm going to start with a little bit of brown paint on my brush. I'm going to give some shadows underneath her shirt in through here, so just brown paint. And then what I do is I'm going to rub it down and kind of pull it in almost as if the skirt is kind of rippling as it's coming down. So you can almost pull it down in these like little bits of streaks away from the interior of that skirt or where it goes under the shirt. I picked up a little bit more brown. I'm going to give some shadows underneath her arms, so maybe something like this. Not much on her. I don't necessarily want it to look like her arms are too far back, so just a little bit in through there and maybe just pull it down in this direction, just bringing it down underneath those arms a bit. I'm also going to put a tiny bit on her shoulder, so this will be a shadow from her hat onto her shoulder. So this is going to be a little bit of a shadow that's going to translate from that hat. I'm going to put a touch more brown on my brush. I feel like I want this to be a bit darker up and through here. And you may choose to use maybe, you could even use a watered down black as your shadow color. That's totally up to you. But now that I've got the shadows in there, I'm going to put one on the hat too. This is going to be more of like a contour kind of shadow, which is going to give the shape of the hat. So I'm just going to pull this down in a little bit of a curved manner in through here, rub it up that hat. So it's going to look like this right hand side of the hat is being shadowed a little bit. So now that I've started that, what I'm going to do is I'm going to start picking up fluorescent pink plus my light pink on my dirty brush. I didn't wash my brush. And this is going to give me a little bit darker tone of the fabric on the right hand side, which will again tell more of the story of that, the light source. So fluorescent pink, light pink, and a touch of brown are on my brush. So I'm going to darken, I think I need a little bit more of the fluorescent pink on my brush, darken the fabric over on this right hand side. Again, just to give this more of a realistic feel and look to it. I'm picking up a little bit more of my fluorescent pink and brown, so it goes just a touch darker over here on the right hand side. I dropped the light pink for a moment just so I can get this as dark as I want to over here. It wasn't translating as dark as I wanted to, utilizing the light pink as well. So this now is just my fluorescent pink plus a touch of brown on my brush. And I think I'm going to put a little bit over here on the right side of the hat as well. And then once I've got the coloring on the right hand side a little bit darker, now what I can do is just start to enhance the rest of the clothing with my light pink. So this is just going to get that darker shade to blend into the lighter shade over on the left hand side. So I picked up my light pink just to get these to blend in together. and then I'll add some highlights in a second. So this is just my light pink, making sure everything just kind of blends and works together, and then I've got everything painted in. You can even add a little light edge to the edge of the shirt or the skirt with that light pink, just to add some little sunshine, making sure that I've got, I'm just using light pink on this arm because I feel it would pop out a little bit more, so I didn't opt to go for my vibrant pink over there. And again, right now just light pink is making sure that I have a good coverage on my clothing. You can also, for realistic reasons, you can wrap this shirt right around the edge of the arm if you wanted to bring it out a little bit from the edge of the arm. That'll make it look like it's away from her skin a little bit, and again gives just a touch more realism to the painting. Again, just light pink right now is making sure that I have everywhere painted in, and that the light pink blends in with the darker areas that we just put. And I'll add a nice bright highlight in a second with some white, but right now just working on making sure all of these colors talk well together. So that's good. Now I'm going to start using white, and if I need to, I can go back into my light pink as well. So right now I have white on my brush. I really want to accentuate some of these areas that I feel would be popping out a little bit. So that's going to be a lot of these little edges on the left hand side. Maybe her arm up in through here too is going to have a lot of the white on it, and then just making sure that I've got it to blend in. You could even put a little extra lightness there, but definitely on this left hand side. And you can have as much movement in the shirt as you want to. If you feel that it needs more ripples or anything like that, feel free to do it. I'm putting a little bit more white up and through here. I really want this arm to look like it's in the sunshine, and then maybe a couple of little lighter kind of ripples coming down in through here, just to give the shoulder a little bit more form so it's not flat. This light area that I just did is going to make it look like it's more rounded. Maybe a little bit more lightness right in through there, and then lightness on my hat. So white paint again is on my brush. I'm putting it in my areas that I feel would be catching the light a lot. So if you have a ripply kind of edge, you can just put almost like these light areas where you feel it would be bumping up or rippling up, and then the top of the hat where you feel that her head would be making it bump out a little bit. That'll be a great place to put a nice highlight, and of course at the tippy top where the sun hits it the most. And then just fiddle with it as much as you feel that you need to, and we're going to be using this same brush for the next step. So you can just wash it and dry it and get ready. All right, so what we're going to do for the next step is we're going to finish our boys' clothing. I'm going to use my small brush. I'm going to be using cobalt blue, black, white, and maybe a little bit of brown too, but I don't know if I'm going to use that. If I do, I'll let you know. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to first start with a touch of blue and black on my brush at the same time. I'm going to, again, kind of go for my easy shadows first, which is going to be right underneath where my shirt is. I feel like this would probably have a little bit of shadow as his leg is coming back. Give this a little bit in through here, and then just kind of rub it out. I am using black and blue at the same time on my brush, which can very easily just look black. So as you're doing this, if you really are desiring in some areas more of a dark blue look as opposed to a black look, you may have to drop the black for a minute, or you can always pre-mix yourself a dark blue kind of color. I'm going to put some right underneath his arm here. I want this to be a little bit more black, so I just picked up a little bit more black on my brush. I'm going to have this left side is going to have some shadow on it too, just again because his arms look to be a little back in through here, and then just kind of rub this down and get it to blend in with the exterior or the interior part of the shirt. It's looking pretty good. And then I'm gonna put some on his shoulder, just like I did on the girl. I put a shadow on her shoulder to indicate a shadow from the hat. So I'm just putting good good dark area up in through here, maybe having it come down that sleeve a little bit. And it doesn't have to be a firm shadow, just something that's gonna tell the viewer, oh yeah, that's a shadow from the hat. Maybe a little bit of a ripple up into this armpit and through here. And again, I'm not doing a whole heck of a lot. I'm just trying to figure out where these wrinkles and stuff would go based on the way that his arms are looking. I think I want a little bit of this black underneath this sleeve over here, which I might not have done all the way on the girl, but that's okay. Something like that. Yeah, that looks good. And then that's looking pretty good. I'm gonna maybe a little bit more in this area in through here. There we go. So I'm gonna, oh, I need a little in the hat too. So I'm gonna have on this right hand side, something like this. His hat is gonna be a little bit flatter on top than hers is. So I'm gonna put a little bit more drastic of a shadow in through here. Maybe a little bit on this rim. Again, just trying to show the dark side of the body. And I want that sun to really appear to be bright and powerful. So these dark areas I'm making pretty dark, and that's where that high contrast is going to give you that it'll give you more evidence of the brightness and the power that light source is giving. So that's pretty good. I'm going to wash and dry my brush. I'm going to start picking up cobalt blue and just a teeny touch of white. So it's mostly blue with just a teeny tiny touch of white. This is going to start my highlights, but I know how powerful the white can be. So right now I'm proceeding with caution. I'm just kind of allowing for myself to kind of identify where I want those lighter areas to go, making sure that they blend in with the regular piece of clothing. So once I put the highlight on there, then I just picked up a little bit more of the cobalt blue to get it to blend in and make sure that I've got good coverage. And then same thing with here on the back. So I'm just going to kind of use my cobalt blue right now to make sure the shadow blends in. And then I'll put a little bit of a highlight on. I need to kick this shirt out a little bit. I lost a corner of that. So right now I'm just using cobalt blue to get that shadow to blend in, make sure I have some good full coverage, and I think I'll then add a little bit of that white. I just know how powerful that white is, and even just that tiny bit down there, I was like, oh, maybe I should wait a second to add the white to it before I make sure that all of the blue is on there the way that I want it to be. So, you know, sometimes you're going through and you've got a plan in mind, and as you start to execute that plan, you decide different, that a better plan would be, a different plan would be a better choice. So this is just the cobalt blue, making sure I have good coverage and it blends into those shadows, and I've got all of my pencil marks as covered as I think I can get them. And now I'm just going to pick up the blue plus a teeny tiny bit of white paint to give myself my little highlights. And your highlights can be really drastic. I want this left-hand side to look very much like it's in the sun. So that was a lot of white, and my cobalt is still a little wet underneath, so I can just kind of blend it down. But if yours wasn't still wet, you could add a little bit more. So whatever color, intensity of the highlight you want is up to you. I think I want a little bit on this, just a little pop in through there, definitely on this left side of the hat, to give that a little bit of brightness, something, and form to it. I don't really need to do a whole heck of a lot to his highlights. I'm looking at it and I'm thinking, it's pretty well shaped the way that it is. Maybe a little bit on more in through here, but I'm digging that. I don't need it to go all the way white, but I've got the intensity where I feel I need it. So we are going to be using our small brush for the next step. So once you've got this done, you can wash and dry this small brush and get ready for the next step. All right, so what we're going to do for the next step is we're going to finish our bucket and our shovel. I'm going to be using my small brush. The colors I'm using are black, brown, white, orange, and I might use a little yellow too. So I'm going to approach it like I've approached the other objects in the painting, which is to do my shadows first, blend that into the main color and then add my highlights. So I'm going to start with a tiny bit of black and brown on my small brush. I'm going to do this little one first. I'm going to put my shadow down at the bottom side of my shovel in through here. So just a little kind of line in through there. I'm going to underline this like this. I'm going to go, and since I have these colors on my brush, I'm going to go do the same thing to my bucket. So again, just black and brown on my brush at the same time. I'm going to give myself a little shadow at the bottom of my bucket. I'm going to put one on this left-hand side like this. I am going to blend this in a little bit on this left-hand side so it's not such a distinct shadow. So just rubbing that out a little bit so it's a little bit softer coming around the bucket. That'll make it look like it's got a little bit more form to it. I'm going to put a little lip on the edge of my bucket, so I'm going to put a shadow underneath that. So just this, my black and my brown on my brush, giving myself a little line, a touch away from the edge of that bucket. And then I'm going to put maybe just a little tiny shadow underneath there. I think that's pretty good. I'm going to wash and dry my brush now, and I'm going to go ahead and put my orange, a second coat of orange on them, so that get that to pop out a little bit more, give myself my full coverage that I desire. Make sure I go all the way to my pencil. Do the same thing on my bucket with my orange color. Again, just making sure that that shadow, especially this one because I have kind of a soft blended shadow in through here, making sure that that blends in the way that I want it to. I'm going to put a second coat up in through here, and again, this second coat really helps to give you a nice solid layer of paint, and it will also and just make it look like it's nice and finished. So I've done that. Now I'm going to add my highlights. So I'm going to opt to use yellow and white on my dirty brush. So I just picked up a little bit of yellow and white on my dirty brush, and I'm just going to pop in these bright highlights up at the top side of these. Maybe this one is out a little bit because her hand might be hiding it. Just a little highlight in through there, maybe a little bit on the edge over here, something like that. And then I'll do the same thing over here. So yellow and white on my dirty brush. So if it blends in a little bit with that with the orange, great. So a little bit there. Maybe this one gets it over here. And I think maybe a little bit more white too. So white and yellow, yeah, there we go. And then on the center of this bucket, I want the highlight to be kind of over in the middle of it, so it looks like it's got some form. So I'm just going to kind of rub in this yellow and white mixture in through here, which I want the brightest part to be right about in through here. And then if I have too much paint on my brush, like I feel like I do, I just wipe it off on my paper towel and then just start blending this out. So this is just providing the information that this part of the bucket is nice and it's sticking out because it's a rounded object, and we've already told the viewer that the light source is up and kind of to the left, so this will help to provide this brightness on this side of the bucket. And if you needed a second layer, put another second layer. If you want it to go a little bit more yellow, put more yellow in it. Like I might want to put a little bit more yellow on mine. I just put a little bit more yellow and white on my brush just to give it a little bit more sunshine. And then we are going to use our medium brush for the next step. So once you've got this done, you can put this small brush away, take out your medium brush, and get ready for the next step. All right, so what we're going to do for the next step is we're going to paint shadows and reflections on our beach of our kids. So I'm going to be using my medium brush. I'm going to be using a whole bunch of colors. I'm going to be using black, brown, my skin color, my clothing color, my bucket and shovel color, and perhaps some of my pink. So I will call them out as I use them. But what I'm really going to be doing, I need to do two things. One is my shadow, because I have a light source, so I want there to be a shadow of the kids kind of in the sand. And then I also want the sand to look like it's wet, like they're walking through a shallow area of the beach. So I want to have reflections of them in the wet water. sandy water. So I've got two things that I'm going to do. So the first thing I'm going to do, and then I want it to intermingle with the little ripples in the beach. So I'm going to put a little bit of brown, black, and water. So I put a tiny bit of black and brown on my brush, and then I dip my brush into my water. So I have a lot of moisture in my bristles, and then I just tap it off on my paper towel. I don't need much paint at all, and I can always add more. I'm going to have her shadow kind of going from the front of her feet to the back of his feet, and I'm really just going to kind of rub in this dark area. It's always better to have less paint than you need, and you can always add more. So I just needed to add a bit more to my equation, and because I've used water, I can see the colors underneath, that sandy color underneath. I'm going to just make sure I bring it over in through here. I'm just kind of reloading my brush, make sure I've got it dark enough for my liking. Just translate this over onto the other side. And it doesn't need to be a perfectly symmetrical shape. I'm just looking for something darker than the sand on the sand. And I'm just kind of wiggling my brush a little bit to create that. I'm also going to put a tiny bit of a shadow underneath her feet. So a little bit just right underneath her feet. This one on the left is lifted off of the ground, so I'm going to put that one a little bit away from her foot like that. On the boy, I'm going to put a tiny bit of a shadow right underneath this foot, right in through here, and then this one is going to go like this, and maybe just a little bit out to the right. His shadow is going to go kind of in front of him, and I'm going to bring it out past my bucket a little bit. And again, black and brown and water are on my brush, and the water helps to kind of spread this out and make it look like it's just part of the sand, like you're just making the sand a little bit darker where those shadows are, and something like that. Maybe a touch more darkness in through here. So I just put a little bit more paint on my brush, get this to go. Yeah, that's looking pretty good. Just want it to be believable, and that looks believable to me. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to add my reflections, and then we'll add a little bit of ripple. So my reflections, I'm just going to have them coming back in this diagonal kind of way. I'm going to start, I just washed and dried my brush. I'm going to put some of my skin color on my brush, and they're going to be skewed and they're going to be long. So this one is going to come about from his foot in through here. I'm going to bring it maybe to about here. So I'm just going to kind of move my brush left to right in this diagonal type of way, so I can give myself this color pattern that's going to be similar to his skin. So this one, of course, is going to be right from this foot in through here, and then again just kind of bringing it out. I see that his leg gets a little bit wider as it goes up. So I'm just going left to right so I can incorporate that same color pattern. I'm going to do the same thing for the girl with the same skin color. So somewhere in through here, and then I'm just going to bring this down. So reflections are great because they can get skewed as they go far away from the object. So if yours don't end up looking perfect, it's okay, because depending on what that water is doing that it's being reflected in will make a difference as to what happens to it. I just picked up a touch of brown on my dirty brush so I can get some little brown dark tones in here, again to emulate what is happening on his skin. So maybe a little bit brown going up this side, maybe a little bit of brown going up this side. Same thing with her, maybe little bits on this left hand side, just again to give myself a similar color pattern as to what's happening up top. Now I'm going to pick up my skin tone plus white to give little bits of highlights. So maybe we've got his little foot. That's a little bit too light, so I just picked up a little bit more of the skin tone. I've got the light side of his leg is on the left, so if I put a little bit of lightness on the left of my reflection, that's going to tell the viewer that, that it's light on the left just like it is up top. So something like that. And then I think I would only see a little bit of his clothing. So I just wiped my brush off. I picked up a bit of my cobalt blue. I'm just going to put a tiny bit of his shorts, the bottom of his shorts, in through here. So just a little bit of the cobalt blue, maybe a tiny bit of black because it's going a little bit darker as it goes away or up towards his shirt. And then once I've got a nice color pattern going, now what I'm going to do is, oh, maybe she needs a little pink too. I think that her skirt is lower than his, so, but she's back further, so this is your call if you want to put a little pink on there or not. So maybe just a little pink. So now that I've got that on there, I'm washing and drying my brush. I just need a couple of little ripples in that water to make it look like it's kind of overlapping some of these shadows and stuff. So I just put white plus a little bit of water on my brush, and I'm really just going to kind of take my brush and almost rub it where it's a little bit brighter in some areas, a little bit more faint in other areas. So it's going to take on the appearance of these other ripples that we had created in the sand itself, but now this is going to translate as being on top of some of the reflections or the shadow. So that way it'll look like the shadow and the reflections are part of the sand. Oh, I forgot my buckets too. Hold on. I need to do reflections of my bucket. So my bucket is going to be just a little bit probably below there. I just wiped my brush off. I'm picking up a tiny bit of my orange. I just need a little tiny representation of this bucket, something like that. Put a little bit of black and brown for that shadowy part. There we go. So if you do one reflection, you got to do them all, just so you keep the story the same. I don't think I'd see hers. Hers would be way off over here, so that's looking pretty good. And then just fiddle with it all you want. If you need more, I just wiped my brush off. I picked up a little bit more white to get a little bit more ripples going on in the water itself, or the area around the kids where they're walking to. So again, it just translates as the little waves are coming in and they're just kind of walking through them, making their way to their destination of making a sandcastle or something. And then just fiddle with it as much as you want. We have one more step with the small brush, so you can just wash it and dry it and get ready. All right, so we are on to the final step. This is the final step of every painting, which is to sign it. So I typically sign mine in the bottom left or the bottom right. I'm going to be using my small brush. I'm going to go bottom left on this one, and I'm using brown paint. I like to sign mine with my initials, but you could certainly sign yours with your first name or the date or a symbol or whatever you'd like for your identifying mark to be. It's totally fine. It's your painting. You get to sign it however you'd like. And that's going to conclude this painting. I hope you enjoyed the process. I hope you painted yourself a really endearing summertime image, and I look forward to painting and sipping with you again sometime.